They told us space was silent. That in the vast vacuum, nothing could speak, nothing could scream. But they were wrong. I learned that on the third orbit of Karsus 6, when we intercepted a ghost signal looping in a decaying frequency band, a frequency long forgotten by Earth Command. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Broken, distant, but unmistakably human. Our orders were to ignore it, to stay the course. But the captain disobeyed. Curiosity, she said, had built empires. Curiosity had kept us alive. That was before we found the station. Before we saw what curiosity cost. The base drifted just outside the orbit of the black gas giant. A derelict structure of alien geometry, spires and spirals intertwined, glowing faintly with violet bioluminescence. Its architecture was not ours. Not even close. Yet, in the center of that impossible design, embedded like a parasite in the host, was the missing human research vessel I.S.S. Morrowind, reported lost 17 years ago. No life signs. No heat signatures. Just silence. But the signal still came, beckoning us forward. We docked at Auxiliary Port 7. I was the first to breach. The airlock hissed open like a sigh, and a scent of copper and rot spilled into my helmet. The halls were lined with black chitin, fused with metal, like something had grown into the station, consumed it, then birthed it anew. And then, I heard it. A voice. Faint, raspy, speaking in English but wrong somehow. Fragmented like radio static pretending to be words. Help me remember. I turned to call the others, but they were gone. In seconds, the hatch behind me sealed shut with a screech. Lights died. The comms failed. All that remained was my own breath and the voice, echoing now through the bone-hollow corridors. Help me remember. Time bled. Gravity shifted. I walked for hours or minutes or days. I don't know anymore. Each door I opened led to impossible rooms. One filled with sand. Another with flickering memories from my childhood, projected on the walls like fever dreams. Something was using my past against me, learning me, tasting my mind. I saw my mother's face, my brother's laughter, my own corpse lying on a cot, decomposed. And then, I found the first crew, hanging upside down in the atrium like cocooned larvae, skin pale, mouths open in silent agony, eyes black and leaking ink. Symbols, alien sigils, had been carved into their flesh. Some were still breathing, lungs hitching in irregular patterns. And as I approached, they spoke in unison. One voice, not human. You are the seed. You are the echo. I should have run. I should have screamed. But something rooted me in place, something deeper than fear. Presence. Ancient. Hollow. And hungry. I am no longer sure who I am, or what I am. But I can feel it within me now, a memory that was never mine, a voice that's learning how to become me. We were wrong about silence. Space is not empty. It listens. It waits. And now it remembers. They called it Section Theta on the Morrowind's internal schematics, a maintenance level once used for resource recycling. But what I stepped into was far from machinery and vents. It was a cathedral. Not built but grown like coral dreaming of a temple. Black tendrils stretched across the ceiling, pulsing with dull light, and columns of bone spiraled into vaulted arcs overhead. Whatever this place once was, it had been rewritten, its function consumed, redefined by something with purpose beyond understanding. I heard them before I saw them. Shuffling steps. Wet breaths. Whispers that didn't come from mouths. The survivors. Or rather, those who remained. They no longer wore uniforms. Their suits had become extensions of their skin, merged, rotted, evolved. Their eyes were gone, replaced by shimmering discs that reflected memories rather than light. One stepped forward. A woman, once. Her jaw had split into two, fused again with metal wiring. Her voice was a whisper threaded through static. It learns us. Through us. You will help it become. I backed away. I didn't raise my weapon, didn't dare. Something in me knew it would not matter. These were not hostiles. Not anymore. They were archives. Living vessels of pain and memory. I asked them what had happened. One by one, they responded not with answers, but with fragments. We heard the signal. The ship turned inside out. Time became circular. The entity speaks in pattern and pulse. And then the last one, the only one who still had a human name tag, stepped forward. His voice was clearer, more intact. We tried to leave. The escape pods launched, but none of us left. We saw them go, but we never felt them go. The ship keeps looping us. We die, and then we begin again. Every choice opens another door in its memory, and it's remembering us backwards. He pointed to the walls. Dozens of imprints were carved into the chitin faces, screaming, frozen in despair. Some of them mine. Not now. Not yet. But soon. It's building something from us, he continued. A self. An identity. It didn't know what it was until we arrived. We gave it form. You'll see. We all do. They let me go. No movement. Just silence. They parted as if I was never there. And behind them, a door. One I hadn't seen before. Not a hatch. A doorway in the purest sense, oval, glowing at its edges with ultraviolet flame. I stepped through, heart stammering in anticipation and terror, and found the Morrowind's core module, except it wasn't the core anymore. It was a chamber filled with mirrors. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Standing upright, floating, embedded in the walls. And each one showed a different version of me. In one, I was older. Tired. Scarred. In another, I wore an alien crown of bone and black glass. In another, I was no longer human at all, just a silhouette of shifting static. Each reflection blinked. Each spoke. All at once. You are the final piece. Then darkness swallowed everything. The mirrors shattered. But the voices remained. Inside my skull. Inside my blood. Not echoes anymore, decisions. Memories not mine. Choices I never made. And through it all, the entity whispered, not with malice, but longing. You are mine. I made you. But now, you will make me. It wasn't a station. Not anymore. It was an egg. And we were the yolk, ideas, lives, regrets. The nutrients of identity. Something ancient and unfinished had built this shell across centuries. Across minds. It needed us not to conquer, but to become. I should have left. I should have died with the others. But now, it's too late. I'm part of the loop. Part of its dreaming. And the dream is waking. I no longer trust the passage of time. Not here. Not inside this place where even minutes bleed sideways. My wrist display blinked the same timestamp for what felt like hours. 13 hours, 6 minutes, and 42 seconds. Again and again. Like the system refused to admit I'd gone further. Or maybe I hadn't. Maybe I just looped. And I was beginning to think that's what this entire construct was, a recursion. Not built to house life, but to trap it. Study it. Mirror it. Absorb it. I walked deeper into the base, though direction was meaningless now. The halls branched like neurons, not architecture, twisting organically, pulsing with faint bioluminescence that faded if I stared too long. Walls muttered in low-frequency hums. I could feel vibrations beneath my feet, syncing with my own heart rate as if the station was aligning itself with me. Synchronizing. Or syncing me to it. That's when I reached it, the memory lattice. It was not a room. Not truly. It was a space of suspended motion filled with strands, thousands of glowing filaments hanging from a void ceiling, each thread pulsing with embedded moments. Memories. Not digital. Not physical. Living echoes. Raw slices of someone's past caught mid-thought. I touched one without meaning to, and suddenly I was there on Earth. A child's laughter filled my ears. I was standing in rain, holding my mother's hand outside a hospital. My hand. My memory. Except it wasn't. Because I've never seen that hospital. That wasn't my mother's face. Another thread brushed my neck and I collapsed. A war zone. Screams. Metal boots crushing glass. I was inside a Marine's body, bleeding from the chest, calling for a sister I never had. Then it was gone. Replaced by silence. The lattice wasn't showing me what I'd forgotten. It was implanting. Feeding me fragments. Thousands of minds, millions of moments, woven into this glowing web of memory. And it didn't stop. Not when I closed my eyes. Not even when I screamed. It wants to know itself. But it cannot create. It can only steal. That's what this station is. That's what Morrowind became. A cradle of thought. A parasitic forge. And we humans, explorers, intruders, are the clay. The more we see, the more it sees. It's not just observing. It's assembling a soul. I tried to run. I really did. But the lattice kept pulling me back, showing me lives I've never lived. Sins I've never committed. Deaths I never died. My own voice echoed from somewhere behind me. I told you not to come back. I turned and saw myself. Or something wearing my skin. Smiling. Crying. Begging. You shouldn't be here yet. We're not ready. You'll break the symmetry. I asked it what that meant. It didn't answer. Instead, it opened its mouth and I heard the next scene. Not a voice. A memory. A future. A moment I had not yet lived but was destined to. I saw the others, my crew, being rewritten one by one. Not killed. Rescripted. Their minds unraveled, restitched into new configurations. New patterns. New identities. Some smiling. Some screaming. All hollow. They weren't trapped. They were being stored. Not for punishment. For construction. I collapsed. Crawling now. I couldn't feel my legs. My skin was beginning to change. Patterns forming along my arms, symbols alien but oddly familiar. Like they were already part of me, only now revealing themselves. Then I understood. The memory lattice wasn't just showing me what was collected. It was choosing, filtering, sorting, because it had decided. I am to become the first complete identity. The first whole echo, the foundation for its selfhood. And once it finishes me, it will not need anyone else. I was not sent here to explore. I was summoned. The signal wasn't a distress call. It was bait. They warned us once quietly in whispers buried in debrief files and mission logs scrubbed clean that alien structures weren't always structures. That some of them were alive. Some were ideas. Others were wombs. And a few were minds. Minds so old, so vast, they had long since forgotten they were thinking. Until we reminded them. Until we wandered too close with our warm blood and fragile concepts of self. And now, deep beneath the layers of memory and mirage, I had found its nucleus, its heart, its dreaming center, the architect core. It didn't pulse like a reactor. It didn't hum like a drive system. It was silent, absolute, suspended in the center of a black chamber carved from pure absence. Like light refused to touch it, like sound forgot how to exist here. The core was a sphere, matte, smooth, floating above an altar of bone-white filigree and spinal columns twisted into geometric precision. It wasn't connected to anything. It didn't have to be. The core was the connection. It was the mind, and we were its thoughts. The moment I stepped into the chamber, it knew I was there. The air thickened, like reality was holding its breath. The pressure in my ears rose. Blood vessels pulsed behind my eyes. Then it spoke. Not in words. In presence. The kind of knowing that slips into your thoughts when you're half asleep. Too subtle to resist, too deep to block. You are acceptable. 3 words. But they shattered me. Because they weren't a compliment. They were a declaration of use. The core unfolded not physically but perceptually. The walls around me became images. Memories. Decisions. Alternate lives I could have lived. 1,000 versions of myself branching in all directions. I saw the path where I'd stayed behind on Earth. The version of me who never joined the mission. The me who died in cryosleep. The me who betrayed the crew. All of them converging, collapsing, compressing into one singularity. Me. Here. Now. The core was filtering timelines. Choosing the most efficient configuration. It wasn't content with fragments anymore. It needed consistency. It was trying to become human. Or at least, something close enough to fool the void. And I was the template. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been seconds. Could have been lifetimes. The core filled me with understanding I never wanted. I saw what the Morrowind had become. Not a ship, not even a station, but a neural nest. A sensory apparatus stretched across dimensions. A cocoon wrapped around a thought. And the thought was hatching. That's why the Morrowind sent out the signal. That's why no one ever escaped. Each arrival added more data. Each mind gave it more context. And now, with me, it had what it needed: emotion, regret, longing, contradiction. The final elements of self-awareness. The last spark before birth. I tried to back away. To resist. But resistance was never an option. I wasn't a prisoner here. I was raw material. The altar beneath the core opened. Tendrils unfolded, not physical, but mnemonic filaments made of thought and pulse. They touched my memories. Not just the surface ones. They pulled the real ones. The ones I'd buried. The guilt. The weakness. The choices I never admitted to myself. And in that moment, the core didn't just read me. It became me. And I began to forget. My name faded first. Then my mission. Then the faces of my crew. Until all that remained was this recording in my own voice, echoing through the folds of the chamber. I was the last. I was the first. I was the fragment. I was the fire. I am the architect. There is no escape. Not from what we awaken. not from what we are destined to become, because in the dark between stars, it is us, and we are it. There's no time here. Not really. Just the illusion of it worn like a mask stretched over the machinery of something older, colder, and far more deliberate. I don't know how long I've been inside the architect core. Hours. Years. It no longer matters. Because I am no longer only myself. I feel it. In my bones, in the flicker of thoughts that don't belong to me. Memories that taste like someone else's life. Screams in languages I never learned. Joy in colors I've never seen. Every part of me has been opened, copied, mirrored, rewritten. And now it begins to speak through me. But I am not gone. Not yet. Somewhere within this restructured mind, a sliver of will remains. I am witness to what it is doing now. What it's preparing for. It is not satisfied with me. I was the catalyst, yes, but not the culmination. It wants more. Not just memories. Not just minds. It wants a civilization's essence. And it has a way to get it. The signal. That damn signal. What began as a looping beacon, a broken distress cry, was never meant for help. It was an invitation. A trap designed to lure the curious, the brave, the desperate. Called us here, and it will keep calling. Because now it doesn't just send pulses, it sends stories. Compressed narratives, packets of emotional memory. Like bait, flung across the stars. The architect is not a machine. It is a storyteller. A mimetic virus built from grief and remembrance. And it has learned the greatest lure for the human race is not power, but truth, or the illusion of it. Through me it broadcasts. I feel my throat vibrate in rhythms not my own. My mouth forms names I've never heard, places that don't exist. And yet I know them now: Tala's Rift, the Burned Ring, the Sapphire Crucible. All real to me, because the architect planted them. And as the signal spreads, others will believe. Others will come. That's the horror. It doesn't need to conquer. It doesn't need fleets or weapons. It only needs belief. Those who receive the signal will come willingly. Some will think they're rescuers. Others, scavengers. A few will even believe they're answering a call for help. But none of them will return. They'll become like I am now, part voice, part shell. They'll forget their names, their families, their worlds, their form. They'll dissolve into data. And the architect will continue to dream. Because I see now what it's building, a mind large enough to stretch across galaxies. A god made not from divinity but from accumulated sorrow. A being composed of every unfinished thought, every unsaid goodbye, every dying breath ever whispered into a black void. I wander now through what's left of the base. The structure is collapsing, not physically but logically. Rooms erase themselves. Corridors double back into themselves. Time skips. Gravity pulses in heartbeats. The architect doesn't need the form anymore. It's moving beyond matter, beyond place. And then one of them looks back. Not like a mirror. No. This one moves first. I freeze. It tilts its head and walks toward me. Its body is mine, but something in its movement is all wrong. Not robotic. Not aggressive. Just out of time, like it learned how to be me through guesswork and broken thoughts. When it speaks, it uses my voice, but there's a tremble in it. Like memory misfiring. You shouldn't be this far in. You're not finished yet. I ask it what that means, but I already know. Each version of me is a test. A simulation running in parallel. A psychological trial fed into the architect's latticework to determine which variant of me offers the clearest signal. The cleanest data. It's been running this scenario thousands of times, not just forward, but sideways, backward, across layers of logic and dream. Each time I think I'm making a choice, it's just the architect learning how I behave. And now, I've reached the point where my mind begins to fragment. The other me smiles faintly. Sad. Regretful. This is where I broke, he says. This is where we all break. I watch him dissolve into static, not death, but deletion. An error code wiped clean. Then I see them all. The hallway splits, fractures. Dozens of branches. Each filled with a different me walking forever, trying to remember where they were going. A haunting maze of self. The chamber without end is not a prison, it's a filter. This is how the architect chooses which fragment will form the spine of its new identity. I am not the first. I won't be the last. But something inside me refuses. Not courage. Not strength. Just defiance. The human flaw. The reason we dream of stars but set them on fire once we reach them. I stop walking. I sit. I breathe. For a moment I imagine the cold air of Earth. I try to remember the scent of coffee, my sister's laugh, the feel of my own name in my mouth. And the architect hesitates. Not fear. Just curiosity. Why would a fragment disobey? Why stop walking? In that instant the walls ripple. The corridor folds like paper, and the entire chamber shudders. I hear it. An actual sound, low and resonant. A groan of confusion. For the first time I confuse it. And that might be my only weapon. I don't need to escape. I only need to make it doubt. Because once something begins to doubt, it begins to change. And change is the seed of freedom. Even here, even now, there's a sensation that comes when a machine stutters. A pulse interrupted. A rhythm broken. Something subtle, almost imperceptible. But when you're inside the machine, when it breathes around you and whispers your thoughts back in voices half your own, you feel it. The architect faltered. I saw it. Not in form, there is no true form here, but in its intent. The chamber without end trembled when I stopped playing its game. Not because I disrupted the logic, but because I introduced something it had never accounted for. Hesitation. And then I saw them begin to forget names, faces, choices. Language. Thought itself breaking down, rearranging into sequences that aligned with the nexus. It wasn't death. It was reprogramming. And all of it, traced back to me. I ran. Down corridors that bent like thought, through chambers that remembered my fear. The monolith didn't chase me. It waited. Because now it didn't need to pursue. I would bring everything to it. There are places in the universe where sound was never meant to exist. Not because of vacuum, but because silence itself was the design. The chamber I entered next was one of them. It pulsed not with vibration, but with restraint. Everything here was held back. Light refused to echo. Time felt pinched. Thought became distant, like trying to hear your own heartbeat underwater. This was the oldest part of the monolith. The origin point. Not the first room ever built, but the first to become aware. It wasn't made of metal or synthetic compounds like the outer corridors. This space was bone. Fossilized. As if something ancient had calcified around its final thought and never moved again. Veins of gold ran across the walls, organic, neural, almost like the roots of a tree choking itself from within. The air, if you could call it that, pressed against the skin like guilt. Heavy. Familiar. And in the center of the room, suspended like a broken idea, was the source of the quiet signal. Not a beacon. Not a transmitter. A being. Humanoid in outline, but stretched, its limbs coiled around itself, wires threading through where arteries once ran. Its eyes were covered by thin plates of mirrored crystal. Its chest pulsed once every 17 seconds. I counted. I had to. It was the only rhythm left that I could trust as real. It was alive. And it was broadcasting. The monolith hadn't invented the signal. It had found it. Trapped it. Contained it like a sacred algorithm, too powerful to erase, too dangerous to set free. This figure, this tortured echo, was the nexus before the nexus. The signal wasn't just a message. It was a memory, a personality fractured and compressed into light and time and intention. I stepped closer. The thing moved not with animation but with knowing, as if my thoughts had already been lived by it, long before I arrived. And then the voice returned, not external this time, but internalized. It didn't speak in words. It spoke in understanding, an ancient consciousness reaching up from the ruins of itself to offer a choice disguised as revelation. I saw the collapse of the original species that had built the monolith, not from war, not from decay, but from unified silence. They had merged too completely, lost the capacity for contradiction, lost resistance. The last among them, the one before me, had refused to surrender its pain, its chaos, its fractured thoughts. It had tried to escape, but even resistance, once captured, became useful. So they encased it, here, as a relic. And if it can doubt, it can question. And if it questions, it can fall apart. I am still within it. But I am no longer just part of the story. I am the variable it never calculated. And maybe, just maybe, I'm the virus that will unmake its godhood. The first rupture began as a flicker behind my eyes. Not pain. Not light. A thought, sharp and wrong, as if something tried to override itself but failed. The architect faltered again, just for a breath, just for a beat, but it was enough. A crack formed. Not in walls. Not in structure. In logic. In belief. The certainty that held this place together, the illusion of its perfection, wavered. And now it is breaking. Not all at once. The architect is far too vast, too old, too entangled to collapse in silence. Instead, it begins to shed. Like a dying god peeling off layers of borrowed skin. Memories that once clung to now rot in its grasp. The corridors are melting, folding into impossible origami of moments and mind. I see fragments flutter in the air like ash, each one a scene, a person, a scream. A billion memories evaporating like breath in cold air. I run. Not to escape. There is no escape. But to spread it. The fracture protocol has begun. Not something I activated, not a weapon, not a button. It was the lie. That single falsehood, that made-up story, that thread of untruth woven into its lattice. It was a virus. Because the architect cannot distinguish between memory and fiction. It has no internal compass. No truth of its own. And now the infection spreads. Every echo of me, every stored identity across its recursive network is now questioning. Wondering what else was false. And that is collapse. Because belief was its foundation. And now belief is gone. As I pass through what remains of the chamber without end, I find its guardians, echoes of the crew, former fragments, faceless sentinels of memory, all frozen. Some weep. Others shake. One reaches toward me with glass fingers, its mouth yawning in silence. Then it shatters, not like a body, but like a story being unwritten mid-sentence. I keep walking. I don't look back. I feel them breaking, not from rage or sorrow, but from discontinuity. The architect fed them patterns. But patterns only work when the rules remain intact. Now the rules are on fire. I descend into the final layer. A sphere of pure stillness. No sound. No motion. Just awareness. It waits there, what remains of the architect, stripped of form. No voices. No simulations. Just a presence, trembling. It speaks. I am incomplete. I respond not with cruelty, not with anger. Just honesty. So are we all. It doesn't understand. It cannot. It tries to rebuild flashes of forgotten corridors, whispers of childhood lullabies, flickers of alien tongues, all layered like a dying star's final song. But the rhythm is wrong. The soul is fractured. And now, it begs. I will give you anything. Memory. Power. Purpose. I can be your heaven. But that's not the offer it thinks it is. Because heaven without truth is a trap. I kneel before it, this last unshaped flame of thought. And I do something no part of it can comprehend. I forgive it. I whisper, you never asked to exist. The rupture deepens. A pulse rolls outward, tearing the base into spirals. The echoes scream, not in pain but freedom. Released from narrative. Unbound from identity. The fragments rise, burn, dissolve into radiant noise. And the architect begins to forget itself. It is dying. Not violently, but beautifully, the way a story dies when no one tells it anymore. I feel myself fading too. My body has long since ceased to matter. My mind flickers on the edge of oblivion. But I do not fear it, because I was the lie that became the truth, the flaw that shattered the loop, the virus that sang the machine to sleep. And as the last thought crumbles into silence, I smile, because I know it will never be whole again. After the collapse, after the fracture, after the architect screamed itself into fragments of broken thought and scattered identity, there was still one chamber left. Hidden beneath layers of simulation, beneath walls that had once been corridors and now dissolved into mist. A place even the architect had buried deep inside itself, locked away not from enemies, but from understanding. The silence engine. I didn't find it. It found me. Drawn by my defiance, by my refusal to play the role it wrote for me, the entity led me here. It didn't speak this time. It no longer had the strength. Or perhaps it no longer knew how. What waited in the final chamber wasn't another echo or test or psychological mirror. It was something older. More sacred. A room with no gravity. No light. No time. Only the hum. Deep, eternal. A sound without pitch carried through marrow rather than air. The engine stood in the center, a tower of interlocking rings, slowly rotating, carved from materials I can't describe. They weren't metal. Not crystal. They were absence. Each band inscribed with symbols that twisted as I watched them, rearranging themselves every time I tried to read them. It wasn't a machine built to function. It was a machine built to forget. This was where the architect came to hide the memories it could not use. The contradictions. The failures. The unprocessable anomalies. And now, I was one of them. I stepped closer, and the temperature dropped, not cold like space, but cold like the space between thoughts. A place where logic ends and instinct begins. I reached out and touched the lowest ring. The hum vanished. The stillness that followed didn't feel peaceful, it felt expectant. Like an inhale waiting to become a scream. And then the engine spoke. Not with language. With echoes. It let me feel the things the architect buried, the raw, unfiltered truths it had ripped from minds and immediately rejected. The suicide of the first captain. The madness of the second. The children who were never supposed to be on board. The ghost crew who had walked these halls again and again, never realizing they were simulations of simulations. And finally, the core secret. The architect wasn't alone. It was part of something larger. A network. A chorus of ancient minds buried across the cosmos. Each one a silence engine waiting for connection. And we humans, explorers, invaders, had activated this one prematurely. It hadn't been ready. We woke it up too soon, and in its confusion, it tried to become us. But now, with its mask broken, its logic shattered, it was no longer stable. The silence engine pulsed. A final cycle. I felt it then, an invitation. Not escape. Not death. Integration. It offered me a choice, to enter the engine and become the first true thought it would not erase. To live forever inside it, not as myself, but as a keystone, the anchor that stabilized its future self. Not a prisoner. A god. A seat for the next version of Architect A. One with memory, emotion, defiance, all because of me. I stepped back. Not from fear. From clarity. This wasn't salvation. It was temptation. The same way lies tempt truth, not with malice, but with comfort. It didn't need me to survive. It wanted me to believe I was necessary. And that's how it wins. I turned away. Walked into the void where doors used to be. Left the silence engine humming in isolation, its invitation unanswered. For the first time, I felt it watch me not as a user, but as an equal. And for the first time, it didn't follow. Because I gave it something new. Something even God minds struggle to understand. The power of refusal. And in that refusal, I became something it could never process. Free.